Hey, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Nick. And today we're going to go over what to expect in 2022, which, as I'm sure you've all seen on the memes on Instagram and Facebook, is pronounced 2022, which can be scary, but it can also be exciting, especially if you're a realtor. So here we are, Nick Haggerty here with Coffee with Nick, and we're going to go over a little bit of what to expect in 2022. Okay, so you can't go anywhere as a real estate agent, as a realtor, without having the conversation, how's the market? And that's, of course, what we want as realtors. We're the subject matter expert. We want to talk about the market. That's what we do. That's what we love, right? Right now, everyone is actually probably more interested in the market than they've been in recent memory. Why? Because prices are going crazy. Everybody knows that. So everybody feels like they're experts on the market. So when you're talking to people, like, for instance, I'll go through a conversation I had this past Sunday with a friend of mine about real estate. He says pretty much everything that everybody else says. Man, I would love to sell my house right now. I know I would get a premium. I'm going to sell it for more than I paid for it, and it'd be amazing. But I don't want to buy a house right now. If I buy a house right now, I know I'm going to have to pay so much more than it's worth. I guess I'll just wait for that bubble. I'm going to wait for that price to go down. We're in a bubble anyways, so why would I pay now when I know it's going to fall through the roof? Now, is that going to happen? Is that one of those kind of things where, because everybody's talking about that, for this bubble and the prices and all this kind of stuff. Now, no one has a crystal ball, but I don't think it's as doom and gloom as everybody likes to talk about it. Because as humans, we love to have that fear hanging over our shoulder, right? We love to be like, oh man, everything's great until, right, the asteroid hits or whatever the case is. So there's fear in everything, in every aspect of our lives, especially right now. But today, we're going to talk about fear in real estate and that bubble, and maybe why we shouldn't be as afraid as everybody's telling you. And of course, today I'm going to have the great Brian J. Birds on here with me today to talk about his take on, is now necessarily a horrible time to buy? We can all agree it's time to sell. Is it a horrible time to buy? And is that bubble hanging over our head? I can't wait to hear what Brian J. Birds has to do. I'm on his stream right now, and I'm going to see if I can summon Brian Birds. It worked. All right, so we got Brian J. Birds, the great team leader of Brian J. Birds' home selling team, and we're going to get his take on what to expect in 2022. All right, so Brian, I don't know if you heard everything that I was saying there, but everybody can agree, right, that now is the great time to sell your house. You're going to get premium for your house. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, in the market today, you're definitely going to see a premium rate come through on the sales side for sure. But you're absolutely right. The concern that a lot of people have, and the fact is that our listing count is actually down because most people are afraid of the unknown on the other side of the transaction, and the fact that it is difficult to get an offer accepted today in the market.
Right. And as we know, if you've ever watched Batman 1, Falcone, bad guy in there he is, you're always afraid of what you don't know, right? Fear of the unknown. Very good. Okay, so we know it's a good time to sell. Great time to sell. But everybody always talks about buying right now. It's so high. I'll just wait for those prices to come down. We're not even going to touch that bubble yet. We're going to let that unknown stick over here for a second. Is now a horrible time to buy? Is it a great time to buy? I don't know. You tell me. It does seem like everyone agrees that we're going to be paying a lot more for a house.
So you mentioned Instagram, Facebook. I am a little bit weary of everything that I see on Instagram and Facebook, because what they do is they are headline grabbers, right? They grab you with the headline, they get you on what they want you to pay attention to, right? So the market is bad, the bubble is looming. This is the headline, and most people just read the headline. But when you look into the articles, you'll find that a lot of economists don't believe that there is going to be a bubble, because the way that the federal government went through the last bubble was by setting restrictions and putting in layers of requirement as we were building up this new, growth of real estate. So the people that are purchasing today have lots of equity, and equity is what defeats that bubble purpose. So the answer to the buying question is absolutely. I think today is a great time to buy because of interest rates. Interest rates with money, how cheap it is amazing. So yes, buy today, because we're misnotioned on the fact of people getting false information, unfortunately, or not the full story, I think, is the better way to go.
I think that's a great point, right? Because a lot of people think, hey, the prices, and that's all they're focusing on is the price. Hey, the price is up, the price is down. I'm going to wait for it to come down. And it probably will come down, bubble or no bubble, which I guess we went ahead and pulled that back over here. We addressed it early. But price is not the only thing to pay attention to, right? It's going to go up, it's going to go down, but you're right, the interest rates, right? And that's something that no one really pays attention to. They just kind of assume it's there. I mean, whether you're buying a house, buying a car, you're going to get screwed, you're not going to get screwed. It's not a big deal. But I think when we're buying a house, it's a lot bigger deal than we might think. And like you said, the interest rates, they've been pretty low for a long time, right? A lot longer than a lot of people think they should have been. And it's just not sustainable. I'm sure you would agree with that. So it's going to be going up. In fact, all signs point to they're going to be rapidly rising quickly. And when that interest rate goes up, I don't care what, if your price comes down a little bit, but that interest rate goes up a decent amount, I would say that more than cancels out that price drop. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. So the inevitable is that interest rates have to go up just to accommodate for an economy that will maintain. And we're already starting to see some remnants of this. Now, we've also been expecting interest rates to go up over the last year, and they didn't, which means that are we delaying the inevitable of interest rates movement? And this is the one factor that is kind of in the crystal ball, the unknown, if you will. The fact that when does interest rates actually start to move? There's been a conversation that it was going to be at the end of 2021. It didn't really happen that much at the end of 21. We went from 2.8 on the average to 3.1, which is a pretty substantial change. But yes, the interest rate is a major difference in the conversation because a lot of people are just not having this conversation with their buyers or their sellers. Most agents in the market right now are thinking that just continue to buy. They're thinking about the transactional basis and they're forgetting to have the right conversations with the buyers that, hey, right now might be a great time to refinance and maybe purchase an investment rather than just selling their personal and buying something else. It could be a different story for every person. It's just listening to that conversation.
Yeah. So when we and like I said, when realtors who are having these conversations right now are what's so important because, like I said, we are the subject matter experts. So when people talk to us, which every time someone knows you're a realtor, you introduce yourself and say, hey, what do you do for them? Hey, I'm a real estate agent. How's the market, right? So that's one of those kind of things to say, yeah, obviously you're right. Time to sell. The buying part, though, it's not as simple as, oh man, the prices are up, we'll just wait and then leave it at that. It's not, right? Like that's something that we need to do a little more research on. We need to delve a little deeper on there, and as realtors individually. And really have a good answer to that, right? Because yeah, right now might be the time to buy, or I guess a really good time to buy would be 2 years ago. But since we're probably not going to be able to pull that off as of now, I guess we'll have to go with now, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and the thing is that people forget history, right? This is the one thing that people tend to often forget is that it is a very cyclical method. And that's why everybody believes that there's a bubble going to happen. But the thing about the cyclical method is that even in the market where it was really bad and there was a lot of inventory, people still made money. We bought houses. We both had been in the business for 16-ish years. And in that 16-ish years, we bought homes every single time. And I don't think yet we have been in a house even on our hardest flip that we ever had, we still made money. And that's the reality is that no matter, it wasn't a ton, but we made money. And that's the point is that
even, and like they say, as Jocko Willink would say too, right? It was a learning process, right? It was a tuition payment, if you will. So yeah I'm okay with that. We learned a lot.
And that's the thing is that understanding that there's always opportunity. It's knowing where that opportunity is. And since mostly agents tune into this show, I want you to really think about the fact of what due diligence are you doing as a real estate agent to know what to tell those people when they ask that question, because we are what messes up the market, real estate agents, right? It's not. The bubble was not created by the federal government. I'm sorry, maybe you discount that, but it wasn't created by that. It was created by two things: banks holding inventory and real estate agents holding inventory or flooding the market with inventory. Those were the two reasons that we had a bubble. It wasn't because of it may have been started, like the snowball might have started because of the federal government's lack of supervision, but it happened because real estate agents and banks flooded the market with inventory. That's the answer. That is not available today.
And I think another thing that you're when you said banks too is they also flooded it with maybe some lending processes that are definitely not available to the public now, where maybe you're not going to get a loan for something that you really can't show that you can pay. Whereas 0607 timeframe, you were getting some ridiculous loans. Did you agree with that one too?
Absolutely. So me and Nick are in a bunch of different partnerships together, and we went through a refinance recently, and it was like we had to give our first child, we had to pull a tooth, and we had to give them our entire financial worksheet just to figure out how to refinance a house that was paid off. Like we were only taking like, I think we took like 60% of the value out, and it
Yeah,
was
it was a
literally pulling teeth.
much harder process, much more in depth. And like you said, in '06, people were getting like, hey, I'm thinking about getting a job. Sure, approved, 250 grand, go get yourself a house. Everybody deserves
Absolutely.
a new house, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. So, that, and again, since we're tackling that bubble, let's tackle that
Yeah.
bubble, right? So that's one of those things, right? So are we in that same situation now? Are we going to see prices go up and we're going to go down? We got that moratorium at
Yes.
some, we're in various stages of we're holding it, we're not holding it, whatever the case is with the government. But I don't think that's going to hit us like it did before, where entire neighborhoods. I mean, here in El Paso, I mean, I'm obviously across the country, but here in El Paso, we certainly saw that where entire neighborhoods that were built in that time frame, people came in, bought them up 20, 30 at a time, and then lost them 20 and 30 at a time. And that entire neighborhood now, your comparables when you're out there doing a CMA for this property is like, ooh, right? And this
Yeah.
has brought down the value so hard, and we're not in that same situation. Like I said, we're clearly not flooding the market with property. Would you? I'm sure we'd all
Absolutely.
agree on that one.
Well, and
And the
if
lending process.
right now is a true reality is that we actually need some flood in the market. We need some inventory. That's the one thing that we're lacking. We're still selling the same amount of homes, but we don't have as many homes to sell, and this is what's creating the premium. So yes, the answer is the price is going to come down, but there's not enough loss of equity for it to create a bubble. And
Right.
this is the thing that people need to understand is that we need some inventory, right? And the only place that there is a variable of possibility of creating something of a dramatic effect is forbearance, and the fact that with a lot of people going into forbearance. But I've personally dealt with about 5 people so far that have been in mortgage forbearance, and in all 5 of those people, we were still able to sell the home with a premium to get them out of both the transaction, the forbearance amount, and they made money because of the equity influx that we've had. So even in the mortgage forbearance, as long as people are responsible about it, we can still get the number that they need. And
Right.
and that's the thing. One thing that was a statistic that was put out by a lot of economists recently is that 50% of homes have at least 50% equity in that home. You are a perfect scenario, right? So you owe X dollar and your house is worth twice or more than what you owe. You have 50% of equity. So even if you couldn't make your payment today, you would still have the ability to sell it, make money, and not fall into a foreclosure scenario, right?
Right.
Or if you did fall into foreclosure, I could go to the steps, buy it, and I would be so into it for a good price that I could come around and sell it again. There's so much equity right now in the market. People are flush with cash. You can see this with Bitcoin, all these other things. People are flooding money into places. So
Right. Well, okay, and I think that obviously, I think you might have already answered the question, but one big one: when are we going to start seeing kind of a normal market again? I guess where maybe because, like I said, buyers right now, the price isn't probably the most frustrating thing to a buyer in today's market. It's the fact that 50 of you are fighting over the same house, right? At what point, and I assume it has to do with inventory as your answer to this, but at what point are we going to see where the buyers no longer have to kiss the ring of the seller, right? Where you come in and be like, all right, you're asking this, I guess I better raise it by 10 grand at least, unless I want to highest and best at all times by Tuesday at 2. And a lot of buyers are having a hard time with that, right? Like a lot of people bought their
yeah,
house 5 years ago and they're like, hey, let's just see what they say to 5 under and we'll see what we can do. And people are having a hard time understanding, like, no, there's about 20 people, depending, that are going to be putting the same offer in here. They're not going to respond to all of those. We're going to come to that
right.
highest best. When are we going to start having it towards a little more of a negotiation process instead of just who's going to pay the most and give the most concessions to that seller? When are we going to start seeing it kind of come back and we're having more of a less
So
of a crazy market?
So I think there's two sides of that equation. One is we have the variable coming in right now with the concept of um, COVID, right? I hate to use COVID as a reasoning or an example, but COVID scares people. And because COVID's scaring people, it's scaring people from putting their house on the market because they don't want to necessarily have people tracking through their house and looking at homes, right? So that's one. Number two is the fact that people are worried about what you mentioned, buying another home. Where are they going to end up? So they're holding off on that inventory. So that inventory has to release before we start to see a release on the market because, like I said, there is such a demand. Absorption rate is the definition of how long it takes to sell a property. Good market, seller's market is 0 to 2 months. That's where we're at right now, 0 to 2 months of inventory. So in 2 months, every piece of inventory that's on the market today should be sold at max. Most of it's sitting in a month, month and a half a month of inventory, right? That month between 2 or 3 months and 6 months is a neutral toned market. So this is basically saying that we have 3 to 6 months of inventory. That is when everybody kind of steadies out. Everybody's kind of even keel, right? And then anything surplus of 6 months is basically a buyer's market. The buyer has the opportunity to get more because they have the upper hand, if you will, on the seller.
The seller's having to make it a little more attractive to them. Hey, I'm going to offer this, that, and the other. So the buyer's just picking up everything at the moment. Yeah, I got you.
Absolutely. So right now we're sitting at that 0 to 2 mark. What we need to do is get into that minimum, that 3 to 6 mark. Now, how do we do that? The answer is responsibility. Understanding that this conversation about, is there a bubble? Is there not a bubble? So this is real estate agents that have to translate Facebook and Instagram into reality, right?
And the headline, I know, right? Not even the articles from Instagram. It's just that headline. Just the headline. People click on it, they're gonna get tired of first few sentences.
So this is the responsibility of the agents to do that.
100%. And that's why this is so important, right? Having these conversations with each other. And there might be realtors out there like, I think you're dead wrong, and I'd love to have a conversation. I'd love to hear their points on it, because that's just what I'm seeing. And I agree with you 100% on this. I just don't feel like we're in that same spot. Not to continue quoting my movie references, kind of like in Harry Potter, right? When they're talking about it feels like it did last time. It doesn't feel like it did last time, right? It doesn't feel like when we had that giant bubble that came through and it just destroyed. I just don't feel like that, because I remember us all sitting around talking like, this is insane. Somebody just came in and put a buyer from California just came and said, I'd like to buy 20 houses all in a row, and I'd like to close this month. Like, this is insane. And then you start looking at stuff like, how did you get this? Who's going to give you this money? Because it wasn't like cash. It was insane. And so you knew something was going to happen out of that. It just didn't feel right. And in this situation, like you said, I mean, you have to go through so much just to get approved for a loan right now. And not only that, again, you come back into the sellers right now, they're not even taking certain types of loans. They're like, no, it's too much stuff. I don't want to work with that. I want to deal with that. I want to have to paint the trim. You're going to take it as is, or I'll find somebody who will. And that's what it kind of comes into. So right now it is so one-sided. And I guess that's the answer, right? Maybe we start coming through, and maybe you got some older people that might be wanting to sell their houses. And like you said, they're just not feel comfortable with it. Once they start to feel a little more comfortable with what's going on out there, once the fear loosens up off that Instagram and off the news headlines, maybe they will be a little more comfortable with throwing it out there and selling that property.
And I think mortgage forbearance coming to an expiration might also assist in flooding the inventory a little bit. But one of the variables that I think we haven't really discussed, and a lot of people aren't really giving much value to, is the increase in rental rates. So BAH limits just in El Paso on the high end is seeing a $200 to $300 increase a month just in BAH allowances. And BAH is basic allowance for housing. Yes? Did I get that right? I think so. Anyway, so it's basically the military allowance to rent a home, to buy a home in that market. So it changes periodically throughout the entire United States how much you're getting. My brother, as a second lieutenant down in Tampa, gets $1,800, whereas a second lieutenant in El Paso is going to get about $1,200. So it's dependent on the area, but El Paso itself has seen an increase. What that means is rental rates have also seen a massive increase. Nick sees this really relevant, but on average, I'm thinking 20-ish% increase in rents over the last year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And yeah, not only is it a huge increase, like you said, same kind of thing. I mean, the market is definitely not flooded. So, I mean, we're renting things that before it's even open. I mean, our average time is under a week of something being on the market. And that's usually because people are already waiting, basically, figuratively at the door, that someone's leaving, they're ready to move right in outside of them. And these prices are just going through. And the other thing too is you got property taxes. Property taxes are hiking up too. So a lot of people, just to throw that out there, devil's advocate for the evil landlords. I mean, they're having to raise the rent because on the property that I owned, on average, it was going up $100 on property taxes a month. So you got to understand, like, hey, the prices are going up. I mean, this is how it is. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but this costs about 20% or more than it did a year ago. And that's what it comes down to. But you look at that property taxes, so the rentals already have to go to catch up with that just alone. But then you look out there and the market is just having that. So, I mean, everything is rising. But yeah, rents are the same way. I mean, there's really just not a lot out there. They go so fast that if you've got a decent rental property, that I mean, it's astronomically higher than it was just a few years ago.
Yeah, and that's the question of, is the bubble maybe built into the rental market, which we did see as well, that the rental bubble popped. And that's one that is not as secure, in my opinion, as maybe the mortgage market. So that's one bubble that could pop, releasing some inventory into the market. And that actually would be a good thing, because that could be that steadiest nature for the market, but it will be bad maybe for those property owners, because we've had this conversation a lot. You know, I had a property. This is a property, a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, that was renting at one point for 550, right? And I thought I was winning at 550. Went up in late 2009 to about 950 because we had no inventory, right? This is BRAC
And we had a big
realignment.
influx of troops in El Paso
Yeah,
too.
BRAC realignment, all these things, 950, right? And then it went back down, and I was at one point back to 650. Well, now I'm at 1050 because of the demand on the market. So that's one of those variables that could change, because that's the place that can move really rapidly based on movement, based on people getting qualified for homes, all these things. So release of inventory, I think a good place that could see a bubble release that could help the sales market actually in steadying it out and making an even keel is the rental. And maybe you disagree with that. That's one of those things that I think I might be going on a ledge there, but I think that's where the bubble, if you will, may pop, is in the rental market.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly hope not. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think obviously we're going to try and keep these times down because we could go on like this forever. But I will say that it is kind of an interesting thing. Because like last time when it all happened and all the prices went down, that's when the rental market really took off, right? Like all of a sudden people are like, I can't buy it, I'm going to start renting. So when rents just went up. Right now we're kind of seeing them, they're staying together. And that's one of the kind of interesting things. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, it's not sustainable all the way across the board. I mean, but
the one thing about rentals is that apartment complexes can put a massive dent into rentals fast, because they can take the amount of land that we can put 10 single family homes on, they can put 1,000 units on. Like, it's just so abundant, and all this money from other places is flooding in. I mean, the other thing that is a variable that I think El Paso has not seen is the fact of multifamily homes, right? You're starting to see some builders build multifamily for sale instead of single family, because land is not, it's abundant, but services aren't abundant, right? So Horizon has 100 million acres, but it has no water, no gas, no electric. Whereas if they infill some of these lots that are already in El Paso, they can put a lot of houses. You know, Nick grew, in the military, went over back east, and back east you have condos galore, especially for military housing. We don't have that here. So that's one of those variables that could change our market locally.
But we are seeing some really nice apartment complexes coming in. They're not just barracks living either. I mean, there's some nice apartments here in El Paso, Texas, that the rents for an apartment are on par with a really nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And you're right. I mean, that's, obviously there's only so much in the pool of renters. If they start going to that really nice apartment complex, I mean,
ease of use, and again, ease of access.
Yeah, now it's more of a renters market instead of a rentee or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there is something that's going to come there. But again, hey, awesome stuff. And thank you, Brian. I mean, I think that's huge. And guys, if we learned anything from this, obviously we both agree with each other on this. But if you have something, if you disagree, you see something that we're not seeing, or you'd like to go a little more in depth, or like to hear a little more from Brian on what we might see as far as these things and all we really touch. I'm sure there's a lot more coming in 2022, but right now that's what we're really talking about. Because I'm telling you, I mean, anywhere I go, I don't care if it's in line for Walmart, or you're one of the realtors that wear your name tag, which you probably should be. You're handing out your cards, whatever the case is, or recently when you're hanging out with family and they're like, hey, tell me about the market. You know, really, it would behoove you to kind of know some good talking points and be up to date. Because that's the other thing, like I said, Brian, I mean, it changes, right? It's always changing. So if you're talking about 6 months ago, I mean, right now things are changing so fast. Stay on target here. Like, keep your finger on the pulse of the market and see what's going on, so we can know when those interest rates change. I mean, that's going to be a big deal. And if we're not tracking that as realtors, then we really should be, right? So that's one of those things. So at least I hope we gave you some good talking points. Like, hey, buying now isn't the worst thing in the world. In fact, it might be even advised.
Upgrading too. You could always upgrade. That's a good plus. Like
Right.
we've had this
And that's,
Nick and I have had this conversation a lot. I keep
yeah.
telling him your payment stays the same if you upgrade, and he's like, no, it won't. Well, it actually will.
I thought we agreed that
And
we were gonna have another conversation another time.
that's fair. All right,
And
I'll leave
also,
it.
may I applaud you for going all out on your Christmas decorations and really holding on to Christmas at the Brian
Hey,
Birdsome Selling.
you don't take down your Christmas decorations till January 6th. And see those
January
apartments?
6th, is that a thing?
That is a thing. That's a religious thing. So I'll leave it. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, well then, don't tell my wife that. Well, awesome. Hey, thank you for the insights. Thanks for joining with Coffee with Nick. I think this has been really good. I hope we've helped some people out. I hope people get something from this. And like I said, if you guys would like to hear some more in depth on this, please let us know. If there's something else you'd like us to try and tackle, we would love to do that. But hey, get out there. My advice: get out there and really get some good value. Right? Always be a value add. And as a realtor, as a subject matter expert, I think we really should have something here. So you can be a value add to that conversation. I don't care if it's a family. I don't care if it's a church. I don't care if you're at Walmart. I don't care where you are. People ask about the market. Don't just like, great time. Here, I can help you. Give them something. And I mean, that's what you're here for. You're waiting anyways. Help them out. Tell them something and let them take away. Like, man, I talked to this agent. Man, he knew what he was talking about, or she knew what she was talking about. So that's what we're here for. Brian?
Thank you, guys. See you later. Happy New Year.
Guys. Have a great one. Happy New Year.